along that same period, my brother Kurt and I were throwing Jim in the room and dropped him. And his head smacked into something wooden. So I feel primarily responsible. But it's just such a great picture because he's got that great smile. He's such a handsome kid and this huge purple mark on his head. We've got the beatings of our lives for that. I also feel primarily responsible for turning Jim on to horror because we moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Breckenridge, Colorado when I was 12. It was a very isolated place. I'm sure it's a lot more built up now, but back then in Colorado, you would drive by 20 miles literally of huge piles of rocks on either side of the road that had been taken out of the mines because they had all the mines up there and stuff. Now I'm sure you can't get like a square inch that's free for less than $1 million or something these days. But it was a very different place up there. So we had to kind of amuse ourselves our own way. And I would primarily do that, being the awesome older brother that I was. Kurt and I would take, one of our primary sources of fun was to make a human dummy out of Jim. We would take our clothing and put him in it and then stuff him full of other clothing. So it's like a giant gingerbread. We would take him outside and throw him in a snowbank and watch him struggle to get out. Another really great thing that I enjoyed, probably more than Jim and Montana and Road, was my mother made the mistake. Are any of y'all old enough or have been through the southern United States and remember Stuckey's?
Yeah.
Okay.
Peanut line.
See that grotesque shade of blue from miles away? Well, they sold firecrackers, and I lived to blow shit up real good when I was a kid. So, what little bit of money I got went to fireworks at Stuckey's. Okay, now they were limited to like firecrackers and the occasional M80, which were real expensive. Okay, and I would take Ro and Jim and push them down a hill and throw firecrackers at them to watch them scream. So they had unique sound. One of the things that we would do, once in a blue moon, we lived up in Colorado. They completed the Eisenhower Tunnel while we were living in Colorado. Prior to that, you had to go over Loveland Pass, which was an incredibly treacherous mountain pass. And everything was ungodly expensive up there. A pair of blue jeans back then, and I'm talking 1971, were $15 there, okay? It would have been $5 anywhere else, but you had to pay for the transportation over the mountain pass and stuff. So to save money, once every 2-3 months, we would drive down to Denver to a place called Cinderella City was the name of the shopping center. And we would spend what little money we got, because we all had to work, but what little money we got, we would buy monster movies, Universal horror movies. Now, these weren't the full movies, these were Super 8 ones that were trimmed down to show only the cool parts, okay? Only the monsters. So that's what we would watch over and over and over again. And we would buy, I'm sure there are a few of y'all old enough to remember Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine. Lived for that stuff. Jim, when we lived up in Colorado, I was an aspiring Hollywood makeup artist. Do any of y'all know who John Chambers was?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to be John Chambers. Planet of the Apes. I wanted to do that stuff. So my mother, being a failed Mary Kay cosmetic salesperson, had a boatload of cosmetics that I could use. Okay? And I used intuition, and I would design very realistic 3D gashes in my hand. Okay? I put modeling clay on there, coat it with the Mary Kay, take a needle, cut right through it like flesh. And then I bought the secret to fake blood from a kid in school when I was in the 5th grade. $2, best investment I ever made. Okay, well, like corn syrup and red food color. That's all you need. I would prepare these gashes and I would go into the clinic up in Colorado and they would start preparing for surgery and get really angry when they found out that it was just me yanking their clothes. So one year for Halloween, I made up Jim as Quasimodo. And it was, I did it for like, I was a kid, I was 12 years old or something, 13 years old. But I gave him like a fake eyeball down here, by cutting a tennis ball in half and painting it and stuff. So he looked really great. So he was on the cover of the county magazine or newspaper in Colorado. And he was hooked, and it was monsters and horror from then on out. And I had a very strange occupation in the military. I went to the Army and served for 6 years during the Cold War. I had a very strange job. I was an interrogator translator. So it was military intelligence, which was a bit challenging because we were the children of a former refugee from East Germany. So when they looked at my security paperwork, they went, yeah, right, like if you're going to have clearance. I did. It took a little bit longer, but I finally got it. Anyway, Jim decided he wanted to do the same thing. So he and his friend Keith signed up in what's called the delayed entry program, where you make a commitment to go into the military. And, you've got a year to graduate from high school and do all the things you need to do, and then you're going into the Army. Well, Jim's friends and Jim's girlfriend, in particular at the time, said, "Oh, don't go, Jim, we're going to miss you." And Jim said, "Yeah, I didn't really think about this." What had happened was his friend Keith, who was supposed to go into the program with him, got into an automobile accident, so he wasn't going in after all. It was just going to be Jim. Now, bear in mind, I told Jim 50 times, "Don't do this. I know you, Jim, and I've been in the Army, I have actual experience, and I'm telling you, you don't want to do this, Go into the Air Force where they treat you like a human being." But he wouldn't listen to me. So he goes into the delayed entry program, and then his friend has the accident. And Jim decides, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gain weight. So I will be overweight by Army standards, and it won't work. It doesn't quite work that way. So I get this call from my mom. She says, "You've got to go down and rescue Jim." And I said, "What do you mean I've got to go down and rescue Jim? I told him 50 times not to do this, and now it's my responsibility to bail his ass out?" So I go down there. Now, I had just gotten out of the Army a few months prior to this, and I'm talking to a master sergeant. And the master sergeant is like, he starts screaming obscenity. He said, "I'm going to throw you out of my goddamn office. Blah, 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 blah." And I thought for a moment, I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not in the Army anymore. Kiss my ass." And I dragged my brother out of there. Now, I found out because I'd made 1,000 phone calls, and I finally got smart and called the Air Force recruiter. Jim was really smart. Like all of us in the family, they were on us like white on rice. They wanted us to be in the military. And we could, if you scored that highly, you could pretty much do whatever you wanted to do. The attrition rate at the school that I attended was 87%. So you'd have a class of 28 people and maybe 8 people would graduate from the thing. It was incredibly difficult. Anyway, when I called the Air Force recruiter, he said, "To your knowledge, has your brother held his hand up a second time and sworn in?" I said, "Not to my knowledge." And he said, "Well, he's free to go." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, he's free to go." I said, "You got to be kidding me." He's like dying here because he's going to be, what they had told him, the reason his plan backfired was, "Well, you didn't hold up your end of the bargain, Jim. So now you've got 8 months to lose the weight, and you're going to become an artillery loader as opposed to an interrogator trainer." And that's why I had to go and rescue him. So the recruiter said, as long as he hasn't sworn in a second time, he's free to go. And I said, "How can that be? I mean, you're terrified at that moment when you're at the induction station and, you're about to go into the United States Army and be torn away from the apron strings and all this sort of stuff." Anyway, he said, "Yeah." I said, look, I promise you, my brother's gonna come and talk to you. As a result, you give me this information that's allowing me to rescue his ass. So Jim, I went down there and I said, I'm doing this on the provision that you're gonna come and talk to this Air Force recruiter, because he's the one who rescued your ass. And he said, okay. And he didn't do it, and I was incredibly disappointed. Jim instead became a pizza technician in Pizza Hut. Set off on his quest to do his own thing, okay? And was able to do it with, to me, incredible success. I can't believe that my baby brother produced 50 books. You know, what an incredible legacy to leave. You know, what the hell am I doing? You know, Jim was a wonderful guy, and I'm so sorry to hear. I had no idea that he was as bad off physically as he was in recent years, because I hadn't seen Jim since he left Marietta. You know, and that was like 12 years ago. And I'm so filled with regret. My girlfriend, Catherine, is a therapist and does continuing education credits out of Cape Cod. So we were planning to invite you guys up to be with us. And then Jim had to turn around and do this. So when I get up there, I'm down there, in case, you know, we're gonna have words. Anyway, I'm really touched that so many people came out. Thank you very much. I love him and I miss him, and thank you all.